Welcome to another episode of the Afro Qi Podcast. Our guest today is no stranger to the Afro Qi community. Not only was she on the very first season of the Afro Qi Podcast, she also offered me my very first podcast opportunity on her very own show, Reiki Radio, back in 2019, where I got to talk with her about how I integrate Reiki with talk therapy. Our guest today is the owner of the Energetic Alchemist, where she offers Reiki classes, self-mastery coaching, the Alchemy Circle, which is group mentoring, and intuitive development. And she recently launched the Energetic Alchemist Oracle deck in the Alchemy of the Oracle course, which you can check out in the show notes. Today, she is coming to us with a much needed conversation about how we can begin to use Reiki in our own self-healing journey. Today's guest is so very special to me. Welcome back to the Afro Qi Podcast, Yolanda. How are you?
Kiera, I'm so excited, baby. I have been looking forward to this, watching your journey over these last few years. It's phenomenal. And I'm so thankful to be back.
I am so happy to have you back. When I was reading that, I'm like, dang, that was back in 2019. 2021. That was what, 3 years ago? Making me do math. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I mean, listen, we're coming up. It's almost 4 years ago.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm just like, time flies.
It does.
So I'm so excited to catch up with you today. I know you've just recently launched the Energetic Alchemist Oracle deck in the Alchemy of the Oracle course. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about that as well. But more importantly, I really want to talk about the use of Reiki in our self-healing journey. I feel like over this course of the year, that has been a hot topic. I feel like that I have been talking about mostly because it's been a journey that I have been on, especially with delving deeper into my spirituality, delving deeper into just self-love, self-development. I feel like this has been like the year of the self for me.
Yes.
I really kind of, I won't say step away or pulled back. I'll just say shine the light on and gave more attention to myself. Yeah. And it really came up. I just recently did a Reiki master teacher training. And a part of that training, we talked about like next steps and, what do we want to do next? And the group theme was like all about the self. And I'm like, that is so cool and powerful. Like everybody was kind of like, nope, like, I don't want to attune others right away. I'm not looking to host no Reiki trainings. Like I want to use these advanced skills for me and for myself. And I feel like even with my own discovery of finding Reiki, a lot of my students as well really find Reiki for themselves. So I really want to talk about like how women can use Reiki healing for themselves while they're in, like their healing journey and their self-discovery journey.
Yeah, so many things went through my head, Kiera, when you were saying that. But as soon as you inserted the word women, my mind went to caretakers. And I think that's one of the problems in a lot of ways. I think a lot of us come into healing. There's something like deeper on a soul level in us that knows we need the healing. We need to be seen and heard. And so I think that's what draws us in. But once we start seeking and go into Reiki, yoga, whatever it is we feel called to, then that healer in us, that caretaker in us will usually come to the forefront, and then our focus becomes everyone else. I think it's a conditioning for us. And I don't think it's a bad thing per se. I mean, it's beautiful. A lot of us come forward and genuinely want to support and help others because we recognize the suffering, and we don't want other people to suffer in the ways that we have. We don't want others to have to suffer in silence and all of these things. So even unconsciously, I think initially our focus goes on to how can I help everyone out there? How can I make this world a better place to be in day to day? How can I make this a better space for my children? All the while, we still get lost in the background. So interestingly, maybe even similar to your experience. When I first started Reiki, a lot of the classes were even focused on how you conduct sessions for others. But for whatever reason, I think it was my curiosity. I did a lot of self-work and practicing on myself just because I really wanted to understand even what clients would feel or experience. So unintentionally, I started cracking open and I started recognizing my own emotional blocks, things I had stuffed and buried, all of these things. So my journey of self-healing started to reveal the importance of paying attention to me and even realizing I needed more healing than I thought I was just going to work on stress. I didn't know. I was holding on to all these patterns and behaviors from, childhood. So I think it is very important for us to finally stand in front of the mirror and say it's okay to care for ourselves. And that will make us even better caretakers for, those we love and those around. But yeah, I think we just get it a little twisted at first.
Yeah, I agree with that. Something I kind of jotted down as you were speaking, along with caretakers, what showed up for me is avoidance.
Yes.
And avoidance of self. And sometimes I find, and I'm just speaking for myself, sometimes I find it so much easier to help, heal, guide, whatever, other people than it is for ourselves, because when we're doing our own self-work, that means we have to face some things and confront some things, and it can get a little ugly. I know, social media and just the media in general has kind of painted this picture of healing as this beautiful practice, right? You see the roses in the bathtub, you see, soft girl life and heal girl summer and like green smoothies and like laying out in the sun. And then it's painted this picture of like, oh, this healing journey is going to be a blast. It's going to be so beautiful. Like I'm going to just be soaking in the tub. And then when you really start to do the work, you figure out like, oh shit, this is ugly. Like, oh my gosh, like this is coming up. This is showing up. So I wrote down avoidance because what's showing up for me when you were speaking about, just women being kind of these natural caretakers, is almost that level of avoidance. It's, I don't want to, or I don't know how, or this feels uncomfortable to focus on myself healing. So let me help others, right? Like, let me reach out and see how I can help other people. Do you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah. And I think a lot of it is just, even passed down and ingrained in us. I mean, we could go back generations of how there was no attention for us. I mean, we were literally forced into caring for others in ways that, we probably wouldn't have naturally wanted or would have done. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's something that has been ingrained a lot culturally. And again, not to say caring for others is problematic, but it is problematic not to care for the self and not to take care of yourself. It's interesting what you say about the idea of healing being this beautiful, fluffy thing. I mean, that's actually part of why I started my podcast those years ago, because when I came in, everyone made it sound like it was just, you were going to be, shit and rainbows. And I was like, whoa, I feel like I'm falling apart. Like, what, am I doing something wrong? What's going on? So I started the podcast because I realized, no, I'm actually healing. And this is tough. So I want to share what I'm going through so that other people going through the healing journey don't feel like they're doing it wrong. And they recognize like, okay, I have the strength, I have the resilience to deal with this. And it's better to not avoid so that I can actually like clear and find some forgiveness and find some understanding around all of these patterns and behaviors and emotions that I've been operating from, that I didn't realize I was operating from. Yeah, so it goes really, really deep. And that's why I'm always excited for people who choose to be on these paths, because it's not easy, but to know that so many of us have this deep drive to heal despite how challenging it may be. And it is beautiful on the other side in a lot of ways, but it's like, it's almost like a unseen beauty. It's an internalized thing. It's like this internalized where you start to recognize and feel more free, and you start to feel more clear and you start to feel more confident. And yeah, it's definitely, it's an interesting thing.
That's a beautiful picture. I'm glad that you mentioned the internal beauty of it. I think probably just as humans, we're always looking for the external, right? But it is this sort of internal glow that kind of comes out during that healing process. I want to talk a little bit about, if you don't mind sharing, just your personal journey or how you personally use Reiki healing as a part of your own healing journey or just personal development journey. I think the listeners at this point they know what Reiki is, whether they have had a Reiki session of their own, or maybe they're even Reiki teachers, or they just know about Reiki or just the power of the healing of our hands. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, if you don't mind sharing, just how you use Reiki healing while you're on your journey. Because I feel like some people know about it, but they may not know how to use it. They might be sitting with the skill of Reiki. I know a lot of students will take a Reiki class and then like not use it. And it's like, I have this thing and now like, what do I do with it?
Yeah. And I think a big part of that too is in the beginning, some people question even like laying hands on themselves may not feel the same as when they lay hands on others. And you tend to feel more when you lay your hands on someone else. And so there's sometimes this disconnect of, well, I don't really know what's happening for me, but I enjoy the experience, the sensation of working with other people. What really helped me with Reiki was, again, like curiosity. I was doing self-work every day, but I was more curious about the tools within the system. So I started becoming really curious about, well, how do the symbols apply to me, not in session? How do I live this Reiki Gokai or the Reiki principles? I mean, like, yeah, my teachers told me to memorize them, but how do I be free from anger and worry? So I just became more like investigative about these things and seeing, if I were to apply them to me, what would I have to do? What would it take? And what are all of these different elements within the system pointing to? So for example, the symbols, right? Let's just say, like, I don't know, the second symbol. A lot of people know that that is like the emotional healing symbol, and, you know, rid bad habit, and it can help us with, but I was like, okay, so what's bad habit? And what is contributing to disturbance in my emotional being? And then mind comes into play. And so there is a lot of it where I was like, it's almost like that whole idea of the mysteries and the secrets being hidden in plain sight. It's all given to us, but we have to go deeper in our own practice to understand and explore the wisdom of it all, which can only come through our personal application. So babe, I went all in. And that was part of the reason why I also started to recognize that it was so much more than just laying hands. And fortunately, at that time, because I was podcasting, there was an author who was also a Reiki teacher who reached out to me to interview him for a book that he had written about Reiki. And so I read the book and I was like, oh my gosh, he was the first teacher that I had seen that was talking about my experience of the technique. And so his name is Franz. And so I had the opportunity.
I know Franz.
You know Franz?
I'm looking at his book right now. The Inner Heart of Reiki. Yes. Oh my God. Sorry to cut you off. I love that book. You know, what I really love about that book is that he talks about becoming Reiki. And not just, you know, Reiki as a tool, Reiki as a this, but actually like embodying and becoming Reiki, and how Reiki is like your lifestyle. Like you can't turn it on and off. Like you are Reiki. You are.
And so, and that's the exact book that I read to interview him about. And so that was a game changer for me, because it was in a lot of ways that book gave me like the permission to, and even recognition of like, oh, I'm really not wrong in how I'm feeling guided through this thing. Okay, so let me just keep going deeper with this self-work and see what else is revealed. So that was a game changer for me. And then funny enough, I just since the pandemic, he hasn't been traveling. He lives in like Holland or somewhere, but he comes to the United States once a year. So I recently, just a week ago, got to spend 4 days with him, sitting my Shimpenden master level class again. I do that every year. And I just want to say that's also something I recommend to practitioners. Like, you don't necessarily just go through level 1, level 2, level 3, and you're like, oh, I'm done and I'm supposed to know everything. Not only does your personal practice bring you deeper into understanding, but resitting classes, I highly recommend to people, because as you evolve and you go back, you understand different concepts and different aspects of the system in new ways because you're changing. So even that is a phenomenal thing to me. Yeah. And even seeing his growth, I was like, whoa, teacher, you've changed. And he was like, yeah.
That is amazing. Yeah. I love that forever student. And that's something that I always tell my Reiki students, like, don't let this be it. And I know even for me, when I was putting together my manual for the last class, they got so much more than the first class, because I have evolved and I have more information and I have more knowledge. So I have yet, because I've done the classes, numerous times, I have yet to do the same manual over and over. Even if it's the same skeleton, I'm always like adding in a little this and adding in a little that as I gain more information. And even for me, I feel like Reiki was the gateway to deeper levels of spirituality and spiritual practice for me. I shared on another episode of how I had a recent initiation into African spirituality. And it came up in the reading that I had some sort, and I'm still learning and discovering, but that I had some sort of Asian spirit guide that has been like guiding me and with me this whole time. And I thought that was so interesting, because I just been naturally connected to Reiki and to the I Ching and to so many, not only African practices, but so many Asian practices as well. So I'm always telling folks, similar to what you said, to remain curious. And remain a teacher, because there's always more to learn. And always more to gather.
There's no end game. And that's the part I think people really have to know. Like, don't put pressure on yourself of, oh, I have to heal in 30 days, or at this point, I should have healed XYZ by now. There really is no end game. It's like, really allow yourself to enjoy the process, recognize those small wins of like, wow, that thing doesn't irritate me like it used to, or, oh, I don't respond to XYZ like I used to. Those are huge shifts and changes that occur within ourselves. But to your point, it doesn't stop. And that's why, like, even say to your students, check back with Kiera in another year. I mean, if you reset the class, you're going to get so much value because of the personal work that you're doing as well. And that's what makes it just so phenomenal. The other thing, though, you made me think of when you were saying that is, I was just talking to someone about this recently. I don't know, but it seems like a lot of people are also feeling called back to understanding the practices and the systems that are of their lineage and of their roots. But to your point as well, I think a lot of us, we can get into whole like past lives. Like, there may be other times, other incarnations where we may have been in other countries, other lineages, other ethnicities. And so, we'll have these callings in this lifetime, and we're like, God, I don't know. That just is so weird. Is it? I don't know.
I am with you on that. And, speaking of lineage, I want to talk about just your belief around how Reiki can be utilized to heal our lineage, or just around these times of healing our lineage.
Yeah. Well, I had a crash course in it, really. During the pandemic. Yeah. For almost 3 years, I spent most of my time with my family in the Maryland, DC area. And I personally live in California. And so I left DC when my mom and I left DC when I was really young. So I never really was immersed in my family that much. Like I would come every summer, but to be around them consistently like that, girl.
Was it quite the experience?
It was quite the experience, but there were different levels to it. So before the pandemic and just doing healing work in my space, what I recognized was there was a lot of resentment and animosity that I was holding on to as it related to like how I was raised or how my mother mothered or, you know, these types of things. So there was a lot of forgiving and like higher view understanding that I had to come to terms with just to allow those different energies to transform in me. So there was a lot of mother-daughter healing that I did in my personal space. And it wasn't even about, and I want to emphasize this because a lot of people think to heal, they have to get the other person to admit, or they have to get the other person to say, like, no, I just in my own space had to recognize, wow, she was however old she was when she had me. This is what her life looked like. Whoa, she worked her tail off to make sure I had everything. That's why she wasn't at home baking cookies. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like I had to do a lot of my own reflection and letting go of what I wanted and recognizing what was to allow healing in that dynamic just for me. Never even talked to her about it, just for my own sake. But then when I got to spend all the time with my family, a lot of what I was holding or my behaviors and patterns were screaming through all of their behaviors. Then I start, oh, that's where I get that from. Oh, this is all of us. Oh, where did this, like, all of a sudden it was like, oh my goodness, right? So everything that I was starting to recognize in myself, I started to see the connection of how a lot of this was passed down. So interestingly, because of the work that I do, and they all know it, my cousins, for example, they would feel very comfortable talking to me about their own wounds, which my family isn't big on, you know, talking about stuff and, you know, you just pick up and carry on. Well, so my cousins who are all older than me start talking to me about their wounds and this and that. And because of the work I've done, I hold space in a particular way with them and I have a different point of view. And so it was like by extension, we all were doing this healing that seemed very personal, but it was actually about our lineage and how we were raised collectively. But the beauty is then you also, well, I also got to see how some of them became more mindful in their communication with their children and wanting to make some tweaks and having different way of seeing things. And yeah, I mean, it's powerful, but it made me think of going all the way back to my grandmother of, well, she did the best that she could and what were her circumstances and how she raised my mom and my aunts and how proud she would be if she saw how her family has evolved. Yeah. So a lot of it, I think people can recognize a lot can be done just within you that contributes to the healing of the entire lineage, the family, the understanding. You don't have to try to force other people to see, know, or understand what it is you are personally healing.
Yolanda, that was a message. Oh my goodness. I have so much I can say. I feel like that could be like its own episode. Like, oh my goodness. What I really, really, really want to emphasize is how important it is, again, for us to focus on our journey. What I heard you say was, you know, not feeling like you have to force people along your journey, or even if they are a part of your healing journey, they don't have to be active participants of it. And I feel like so many times, you know, what's coming to me right now is the word closure, right? And sometimes people feel like, oh, to get closure from this thing or to heal from this thing, I got to hear sorry, or I got to hear, like, that person has to face me and they have to. But what I'm hearing is that they don't have to be active participants for you to proceed in your journey and get what you need to get in your process. What I also heard in this lineage healing is leading by example.
Yes.
You know, and as you're going through your course and going through your process, quite naturally, there are going to be others in your family, in your lineage, that follow behind. So just being that example and that light in your family sometimes is enough, you know. And yeah, that was very, very, thank you for sharing that. It's I'm being remembered of a conversation I've had with a family member. I won't oust them here, but if they're listening, they know exactly who they are. And they're on a journey very similar to what you mentioned. And they were sharing with me, they didn't notice that they were sharing with me, just being in this space where they wanted those around them to heal. You know, this person needs to go to counseling. This person needs to do this. And this person needs to. And in the midst of a conversation, I courageously offered, how about you let go of what everybody in your family needs to do and take those recommendations and use them for yourself? And that's where it starts. You know, you can't focus all of your energy pointing the finger. You need to do this. You need to. And it's like, well, what are you doing in your own journey? Because that's a lot of energy, Yolanda, to outwardly be focused on controlling the path of somebody else and somebody else's journey, when you can use that same energy to get what it is that you need to get. And I think now that I'm saying that, it almost kind of goes back to what I said earlier about that avoidance. It's so easy. It's easier for us to, you know, kind of dictate, you need to heal this and you need to let go of that. And it's like, well, what do you need to heal? What do you need to let go of? But if we focus on what we need to heal and what we need to let go of, we got to confront some things. And who wants to do that?
Girl. Well, that's the thing too, Kara, I think is a big part of this with Reiki and just healing in general. I think a lot of people assume it's just within the techniques. But to your point of what you're sharing now, what is exposed for us is what we have to deal with, and the techniques just support us through it. So for example, everything with what you just shared, it screams to the attachments we have to our stories, you know, like I'm going to be mad, I'm going to be upset, they have to. And part of it is just us seeking the validation of like, I just want you to say, I want to be seen and recognized as one who was wronged or hurt or this or that, right? It's understandable, you know, wanting the recognition. But at the end of the day, if you're so caught up in and attached to the story of them, they, it doesn't support your healing. It doesn't. It only makes you more upset. It only causes more tension, frustration, all the things within your own being. Whereas if you recognize like, okay, this person, they are who they are, they did what they did. How did it impact me? What part of me can I see and hear? What part of me can I recognize? What part of me needs soothing from me? But also like honoring, I think it's also important to honor that you got through whatever it was, like recognizing your resilience, recognizing what did that situation teach you about who you want to be or don't want to be? How does the situation contribute to you being a better partner or parent rather than repeating the patterns and the cycles, right? So there's so much gift in the healing that can happen just in your own space that you don't need their permission, acknowledgement, validation, or anything else to get, and you might not ever get it.
Yeah.
So you're gonna put your healing on hold for something you might not ever get? Like, why? You know, that that is one of the biggest things, and it can be one of the most challenging things to let go of. But it's one of those things, again, healing doesn't happen overnight. You might have to just work through the first layer of telling yourself, stop attaching to needing something from them. Okay, that's part one. Now let me recognize, what can I pour into for myself? Okay, now I'm not fully over that thing, but it doesn't sting the way that it used to. That's progress. and you just keep going.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I want to circle back to how to use Reiki for our own journey. One thing that really stuck out to me that you mentioned was really getting to know the symbols. Because as you're talking, I'm already thinking about like, okay, what symbol, is that connecting to? And, really getting to know the symbols. I know in practice, sometimes it can be, just trying to memorize them and, remembering how to draw them, remembering their names. But it's like after that, further mastery, really connecting to them, almost like building your own relationship with them. And also getting to know the Reiki principles. When you were speaking, the one that stuck out to me was worry. And sometimes worry can almost be like cousins to control, right? And there's that worrying and eventually trying to control a situation is really honing in. I think that kind of goes back to becoming Reiki again, is okay, outside of the hand positions, what else, like what really is, like, what is Reiki really?
Right.
Because it's more than putting your, laying your hands on yourself or others, or even doing distance. There's so much more that Reiki has to offer someone along their journey. What I have personally used Reiki for is the symbol that helps us to go back to the past. I was doing some mother womb healing. And I was really able to tap into that symbol to really go back to that time in my mom's womb, go back to some events from my childhood, and really spend some time there, spend some time remembering, just as you said, how did this situation cause me to be who I wanted to be and also who I don't want to be? How can some experiences of my childhood show me how I want to parent, and really connecting to that Reiki symbol to really heal those things from the past. So I really wanted to point that out just for those. I know people like to listen and take notes of, going back to that question of how can you really use Reiki outside of, have a daily practice, meditate every day and practice your hand positions. Like outside of that, it's like, okay, yeah. And what else? Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to offer
I
that
look
as well.
at the symbols almost as like a roadmap to supporting us in how to live the principles, right? So like if I use the tools of the symbols and I come into relationship with that, then I will understand how to actually live the Gokai, how to be free from anger, worry, to be in my gratitude, all of this, right? So like just in a real simplified state, like the first symbol, I always see that as coming into me, like coming into myself. And it's often, put with, power and empowering and amping up the power and these things. But what is more empowering than your self-connection? It's like you can't even really fully function or fully be in your power without being fully present and connected to yourself first and foremost. So there's a gift in that symbol of recognizing what it means to just be here, just sit with you, come within your being, right? Again, a lot of what we've talked about, stop focusing so much on the external and bring it on home. So you can learn a lot in that practice with working with this first symbol. So now I'm connected to me. And now what happens? I sit with myself, I may meditate. As we talked about, realization starts happening. Oh my gosh, I recognize my emotions. I recognize the stories of my mind. What helps me? What's next? Second symbol. Okay. I need to purify my heart mind. I need to have awareness of what it is I'm holding. I can only be aware of me if I'm connected to me, and I can only do something about it. I can only heal, forgive, go back to the Gokai. I can only do these things or achieve these things with compassion. The second symbol points to compassion, and it's linked to this whole story with the Amida Buddha, blah, blah, blah. Moving on. The third symbol, right? So now I'm connected to myself. I'm working on the transformation, forgiveness, having compassion for myself, for my mind and my emotion. I move on to the third symbol, and this is literally, it's called a Jumon. The kanji of that symbol is literally like constructed as a spell, which we'd have to do a whole nother show about again. But it really is. It's a symbol that we also use, to do remote sessions and this and that. But But why is because it dissolves the illusion of separation. Me and you are looking at each other now like, oh, look at Kira. Oh, she's so cute over there. Nah, like we're not separate from each other, but I can only experience that. We can intellectualize a lot, but these different tools and practices bring you into the experience of it, right? So
Absolutely.
in this symbol, we learn to dissolve the illusion of separation and recognize, wow, I really am one with all. Because I'm one with all, I can connect to my being in my mother's womb. Because I'm one with all, there's no space-time restriction. I can connect with whomever in another country to do energy work with them, right? Like, so there's a lot of gift in that understanding. More importantly, I'm not separate from my source. I'm not separate from all there is. What? Whoa, right?
Yes.
Then we get onto master level, and that fourth symbol, now I am coming into the understanding of being the great bright light. Well, I had to go through all those other steps just to get to that potential of understanding, right? And now if I embody those, I practice these, this is going to help me with understanding how to live and express the principles or the Gokai. So yeah, I mean, it's like, again, surface level, oh, I have some symbols and all, did it? Okay, it's nice. But if you really bring it in to apply, take time and relationship build with these different things, you see what they're pointing to. They're pointing to not just your healing for the sake of healing. It's like revealing more of your true nature. What am I really? Who are we really? I'm separate from no thing. Like, what? Stuff is amazing.
Yes. That's bringing me back to the author again. His introduction of like the true self. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Okay, Yolanda, before we go, because I'm like, oh, I gotta have you back again. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I want us to talk a little bit about, as we wrap up, about your Energetic Alchemist Oracle deck and, you know, how that was birthed. I can just only imagine after this conversation how that vision came to you and how this Oracle deck was birthed. And if you can just share with us a little bit how women can use this Oracle deck along their healing journey.
Yeah, absolutely, love. It's funny, when I first started Reiki, a lot of people experience this. You become more sensitive to energy, more intuitive. You start seeing things like what's happening. So back then I started taking a lot of intuitive development classes because I wanted to understand what it was I was experiencing. And back then as well, one of the things that helped me to translate my intuitive mind was Oracle cards. So then I fell in love with Oracle. I fell in love with Tarot. I have more decks than I would ever admit. But part of the reason I had so many decks is because I was looking for something that spoke to the healing journey I was on, you know, like I wasn't just curious about like, oh, what's going to happen next Friday? Like, nah, I wanted to know, like, I'm stuck in this healing cycle right now. I'm attached, I'm clinging, I'm afraid. Like, what does this mean? And how do I move beyond this? What's going to help me through my healing process? So I thought like, well, I need to make a deck that speaks to that. Fast forward, I was like, I'm not an artist. I can't afford to commission an artist. I don't know how that. 10 years later, fast forward.
Wow.
Right before the pandemic, a friend of mine recommended an artist to me. And so I found the artist, I commissioned the artist, and I was like, okay, here we go. So I had this amazing process of, and we only worked through email. Okay. I was in California.
What?
Yeah. She was in Philly, or well, not Philly, but she was in Pennsylvania. Anyway, all of our correspondence was through email. So I'm telling her every single card, the characters, and it's very diverse, the deck, all different cultures, again, could point to past lives, but even just the world we live in, right? But so I had to give her the ethnicity of every character on every card, the symbolism, like the colors, every single detail So it took her and I a year just to complete the artwork. And then I couldn't write the definitions until I saw the art, because I wanted the actual art to speak. Yeah. So then during the pandemic, while I was on the East Coast, it took me about 2 more years just to get through the definitions. And part of that was because not only did I want it to speak to Reiki practitioners, healers, empaths, anyone that is doing this work, I was going through it. I mean, we were in the pandemic. I had 3 friends pass away, like back to back. I was like, what? So I had to really, it meant so much to me for this to be a tool that truly supported everyone in their healing journey. So finally finished. After 3 years, the baby was born. So now we have this deck, and it's comprised with 4 different sections. It has a chakra section. It has a realm of duality section, because we know living in this realm of duality. There's also a section of 22 cards that mirror the major arcana in tarot, because those 22 cards literally outline what it's like going through our healing journey. And and then the other section of cards point to the elements, which are like our emotions, our mindset, and all of these. But so it's done. It's done.
They're done, and they are beautiful. So make sure you guys check out the show notes so you guys can check them out and place your order with Yolanda. And then last thing, you actually have a Alchemy of Oracle course. Can you share a little bit about that as well?
So with the Alchemy of the Oracle, when I was creating the deck, there's 2 main characters in the deck. One is the seeker and one is the oracle. And the oracle to me represents that mediator between the realms. It's like even what we experience in practicing Reiki, like we're aware of the physical realm, but we're also aware of the non-physical, and how do we function as a mediator between. So Alchemy of the Oracle teaches people how to not only work with the cards and do readings, but how can you use it as a coaching tool to hold space, to act as the mediator between the realms, supporting people through their healing process. So the class, it brings in the combination of holding space, doing energy work, and using the cards as a way of clarifying and having discussion to help illuminate what may be in people's blind spots, and on and on.
I love it. I love it. I just know people that are listening are taking notes and like, where do I get these cards? Where do I get these cards? That is so beautiful. And I'm grateful that you have a course that goes along with it. Because I think for some people, once that level of curiosity is, once they get to a certain point, they want to be able to use them. We talked about that, right? So once we kind of have all the goodness for ourselves, we do want to come out and share and be able to help and guide others. So the fact that you have that course is amazing. So Yolanda, I want to thank you so much for your time. I want to thank you so much for this conversation. And if you can just share, where is the best place for people to reach out to you?
On Instagram, I'm starting to be more active. At Reiki Radio, just that simple. There's no dashes, nothing, just at Reiki Radio. My website, though, is the best place just to find everything, which is theenergeticalchemist.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yolanda.
I appreciate you. I can't wait to have you back on my show. I'm so proud of you and everything you're sharing to support the healing for all of us. So thank you for all that you do, my love.
I appreciate you.